So much of this hangs on the quarterback battle that's going to happen this spring. And I think Ryan Williams is going to play a big part in that battle because a lot of it's going to be about, can you make plays with your big guy? Can you put him in a position to succeed? Can you develop a trust with him when he is covered and you got to make a play anyway?
Hey, how you doing? Welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com, and it's Super Bowl time. I mean, we just learned who's going to be in the Super Bowl, and there are a lot of Alabama players playing in it, as usual. But we're going to get into a little bit more Alabama football today. We're going to talk about some key players who are going to be key contributors in 2025, guys who we think will help Alabama become a contender again and make the college football playoff and maybe even contend for a national championship. But we're going to get to that in just a minute. I'm joined by the two Matts. Matt Stahl, AL.com, Alabama football writer, beat reporter, and Matt Scalici, Beat Everyone producer. Welcome, guys. Let's start with the Super Bowl, and I'll start with Matt Stahl. Matt Stahl, you're an NFL guy. You watch the NFL pretty religiously, I think. You've told me your fandom. I don't know that you want to confess that on the air here or not. I'll leave that up to you. But we've got a Super Bowl matchup. It's the Philadelphia Eagles. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, they're going for a three-peat, and it's a rematch from a couple of years ago when Kansas City narrowly escaped with victory. And we've got Jalen Hurts back in the big game. We've got Devontae Smith. We've got Landon Dickerson. We think if he's healthy enough, nobody on the Kansas City side is an Alabama grad or played at Alabama. So I think Alabama fans are probably all in on the Philadelphia Eagles. But what do you think of this matchup? I mean, do you think Jalen Hurts and this team stand a chance against a team that's on the verge of making history?
Yeah, I hate to be the Debbie Downer on this podcast, but I will believe that the Chiefs aren't going to win this game like when the Eagles are lifting the trophy. Like it's they just seem like the unstoppable force in the NFL right now. I mean, there were just so many opportunities. I don't know when the pod's coming out, but the game was yesterday to beat the Bills or for the Bills to beat the Chiefs, and it just didn't happen. They seem like the team of destiny. So I think the Eagles have a good team. Obviously, all the Alabama guys. You got Saquon Barkley is like as good a running back as you've seen. I mean, for me ever, and I think they're still going to lose the game.
Matt, what do you think? I mean, I know you've talked on this podcast a lot about Jalen Hurts. You're a big Jalen Hurts guy. We love Devontae Smith. All those guys are on that team, but this is special to see him back in the game so soon. And I know Alabama fans are just really, really hoping that this guy pulls through and makes history as a starting quarterback from this school.
Yeah, I mean, I think the weight is more on Kansas City. I mean, I think they come into the game. It's hard to position yourself as the underdog going into the game. Everybody knows they're the big bad guys in the NFL, and I think Philadelphia is while there is still a ton of pressure, I think there because of that fan base. I think they are playing looser right now. I think they are. I think they look like things are coming together at the right time for them. You look at yesterday, the way that offense finally exploded in a way that I think they've been waiting for that to happen all season, for everything to click. And, Barkley is just, I would say, arguably having one of the best seasons of any NFL running back in recent history. Jalen Hurts is, look, in some ways, he's kind of like an exaggerated version of what we remember from his days at Alabama. All of the good stuff he's even better at than he used to be. He still has some of those occasional bad tendencies, but man, even banged up yesterday, he was a force on the field. He is a physical force that there are really no comparisons for in the NFL at the quarterback position. And it's so fun to watch him do it at this level. I don't know. I'll say I'm definitely not counting out the Eagles, and I think especially if the way that Buffalo really limited what Kansas City's offense was able to do, I think the Eagles can do that. I think they can pull that off defensively.
Yeah, they've got a really good defense when you talk about guys like Slay and Carter and Bond. I mean, they have some injuries too, like Nakobe Dean being out, and they have depth at linebacker position, and they've stepped up in a big way. But when you're talking about, Patrick Mahomes, it's just a different beast compared to who you've played against. I mean, Jaden Daniels, what an incredible talent. Took his team all the way to the NFC Championship game, but he's a rookie quarterback who couldn't get it done against a really super talented Philadelphia team. They've got all the pieces to win a Super Bowl, but when you run into a team like a dynasty like Kansas City and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones and these guys who are built for this and have proven that they can do it, like, who knows what's going to happen? I think the expectation is going to be that Kansas City wins this game, but we've seen crazy things happen in the Super Bowl before where underdogs have won. I mean, those Patriots teams had lost to Philadelphia, lost to New York multiple times. So anything is possible. But I mean, the Jalen Hurts story is I think the most important, especially with our audience, certainly. I mean, this guy has been counted out several times as both a college quarterback, obviously benched while at Alabama, transferred, counted out as an NFL quarterback, somebody who came in as a young guy. And a lot of people had doubts about him as a passer, as a decision maker, as a guy who could lead a team to a Super Bowl. He gets them there. He nearly wins the game, has an MVP caliber season going into that Super Bowl. And a lot of people have counted him out since then and say that he's probably not the guy. And he and Nick Sirianni are butting heads and are not a good fit, and it's time to blow it up again. And so here they are again, suddenly in the Super Bowl, and he has arguably his best game of the season in the NFC Championship, beating a very good Washington team who has a very good defense. I mean, hanging up 55 points on a good defensive team like Washington in the NFC Championship is super impressive. And he's connecting with guys like A.J. Brown when people thought that, there were issues there, right? But really, I mean, the point of that team and offense and the identity of it is turn around and hand the ball to Saquon Barkley. Like, it's kind of like Derrick Henry, how we've talked about him on this show. Just give that man the ball. He touches the ball for the first time and goes for 60 yards and a touchdown yesterday, and then they get away from that, and suddenly they're starting to stall. It's like, oh yeah, Saquon Barkley's there. As good as Jalen Hurts can be, as good as those wide receivers and that offensive line can be, give that man the ball. So I agree with you. Like, that's what is going to be the defining thing about this team. It's like, if Saquon Barkley gets a lot of touches, then they're going to have a chance to win. But you never really can predict what will happen in the Super Bowl. Here's hoping that Jalen has a big game. Here's hoping Devontae Smith has a big game. Here's hoping that Landon Dickerson plays, because it looked like he was playing on one leg before he left the game yesterday. So
that's kind of how we all remember him anyway from Alabama. I will say, Ben, it is. I mean, look, there's a lot of guys who were big college stars at Kansas City. So I'm being reductive by saying this. To me, as primarily a college football fan, this Eagles team is one of the great, like, recent college football all-star collections. Like, these guys were a lot of these guys were name brand guys in college. And so it's very fun for a college football fan in particular to watch this Eagles team, because these are guys that we have, like, very clear memories of if you were watching, the high level college football of their era between Barkley and Hurts and Smith. And there are a lot of guys on this team who are recognizable names, whereas, like, the Chiefs, I would say that's more for, like, the college football snobs, like the guys who really were drilling down and watching the Thursday night games when these guys were in college.
Yeah, well, it's a good matchup, I think. Like, I'm fine with it from a couple of years ago. These are two of the best teams in the NFL. There are stars galore here, storylines galore. Taylor Swift will be there. That'll appease so many people out there. And who is it? Kendrick Lamar is performing at halftime. Yeah. Like, it's going to be. What do you think? Like, Tom Brady, I think, is going to be on the call, right? The Fox team, I think, is doing this call. It'll be his first time calling the Super Bowl. I know, like, I would have been more excited about maybe Tony Romo, maybe Chris Collinsworth even, but it'll be interesting to see how Tom Brady does calling a Super Bowl. He's got some experience there. Okay, let's move on to Alabama football here. We'll watch the Super Bowl. We'll get to it. We'll share some predictions next week maybe, but Matt, we're going to talk about guys we think are going to be big contributors. Matt, frame this for us. Like, I mean, we're talking about individuals who are going to take that next step and are going to be the reason Alabama's championship caliber in 2025, right? Matt Scalici.
Oh, you're gonna have to specify today. You can't even go last initial today, Ben. Yeah, I mean, look, I think this team is returning a lot of key pieces in a surprising way. I think that was one of the surprising results of this season following the bowl game, was just how many of these guys have said that they're coming back. given that it obviously was not an ideal experience for Alabama football. That said, I think everybody feels like, and it seems like the consensus is building, that DeBoer did not have the personnel that he would ideally like to have to operate an offense going into this season. And he had to deal with the cards he was dealt, so to speak. So you would expect that the starting roster offensively is going to look very different coming into this season. Defensively, look, ultimately, you and I have talked about this on the show, Ben. We felt like this ended up being a really good defense and a unit that played some really good football, even going into including the bowl game, which it's hard to find anything really positive to say about that bowl game, but the defense did a pretty good job. And they are losing some key pieces, but I think for the most part, there are some guys coming back who could have a huge impact on this team, making it, playing essentially the same schedule but flipped. But can they do better this time? Can they take largely the same challenge and have a do-over and make something better out of it?
Okay, sounds good. I think we got that covered. Matt Stahl, a lot of familiarity with the proposed depth chart for the 2025 season. You've covered this team for a couple of years now, and you have a knowledge that neither of us possess when it comes to like the personnel of this team and who we should actually expect to see on the field maybe this year. So let's just go real quick through these names, Matt. Like, who's the first guy based on what Matt Scalici just said? Who do you think stands out as the guy that you're watching to make the biggest contribution and difference this year?
There's a few different ways to think about it. Like, you could just go ultra obvious and, just pull out like, oh, Ryan Williams is a really good player. He's going to be important, which I'll do some of that. Ryan Williams is going to be on the list. But, like, there's also, like, the one I'll start with here about up on the offensive line at tackle, Wilkin Formby. Like, they had some struggles at that tackle spot last year between him, Elijah Pritchett, who's gone now, and yeah, those two just were inconsistent in their time on the field. He was a big recruit, obviously from Tuscaloosa, has sort of the Alabama family background, sort of descended from the Taco Casa family. So, has every bona fide you want there. But, I think he can make a big step up this season at that starting right tackle spot opposite Caden Proctor. And, if he just can step up and become a stud, like, that's going to be enormous to start out. Do you just want me to go through the whole list, or do we want to?
Let's go back and forth a little bit, because I had I was going to say a couple of guys on the offensive line too, and he would obviously be somebody who would be a semi-new starter. He got a lot of key reps in 2024, but he's going to be the full-time guy now with Elijah Pritchett out. But I was going to mention Parker Brailsford and Jaden Roberts. I mean, those are both guys who are solid. Brailsford had a really good season. I think Roberts, it'd be interesting to see him reach another level. A guy who is considered the strongest on the team by the team, just a guy who's powerful. You would expect him to be somebody who could dominate in a run game. But obviously that's something that Alabama did not specialize in last year. They were pass protection heavy. And if Ty Simpson is going to be that guy, they're going to have to, be elite in that area. And we'll see if they can step up. But Brailsford, I think, he has a chance to be an NFL caliber player. Jaden Roberts obviously has the size and the intangibles. We know what Proctor brings to the table at this point. So it's good that Alabama has a lot of depth. So I agree with you that Formby is the guy that everybody is watching. And will he develop? Did those reps count for something in 2024 when he came in and there was a lot of scrutiny hurled his way? But I want to switch positions, if that's okay, for just a second, because you mentioned Ryan Williams. And I want you to elaborate on that and like why he needs to sort of step up and become that different type of difference maker in 2025. But I think there are two guys at the wide receiver position. We know what Jeremy Bernard brings to the table. We have no idea what Isaiah Horton is going to bring to the table for Alabama. But I want to talk about guys like Cole Adams and Jalen Hale and whether or not they can stay healthy in 2025. Because Cole Adams, I thought, proved that he was a contributor early in the season, a guy who could be a possession type wide receiver, third down type receiver, right? But more importantly, a special teams player, a guy who could field punts, give Alabama good field position, was extremely reliable in that regard. But he seemed like the guy who could make plays for Jalen Milroe in Alabama, and that weapon got taken away at some point in the season, and I think that probably hurt Alabama's offense in some ways. And Jalen Hale was a guy, there was a lot of hype around him before the 2024 season. He got hurt, obviously, missed the entire thing, even though I believe he was practicing during bowl season right before the Michigan game. He was back out there, so that's good to see, but we'll see how healthy they can stay. But Matt Stahl, like, what kind of depth do you think those two guys in particular could bring to that unit if they're healthy all year?
I consider putting Cole Adams on my list. Like, yeah, he's going to be. He was obviously their best punt returner last season, right up until he got hurt. I'm not like super injury concerned with either of those guys, really, because I mean it wasn't ticky tack stuff. It was like broken bone sort of thing. And I mean that either happens or it doesn't. That's not you're prone to broken bones, I don't think, in college football. But yeah, he's going to be enormous. Can sort of be like a safety valve wide receiver, but yeah, especially in that punt return game. And then Jalen Hale, like I think Kalen DeBoer has been pretty high on him at times. Obviously, had the leg injury that was pretty severe. He was back out there doing no contact participation in practice for the bowl. I don't know I believe he was out there some before that, but we didn't really get to watch practice up until the bowl. So, but yeah, he's another guy who another well thought of guy at that wide receiver position that should be pretty deep this year.
Matt Scalici, I mean, he said that he wanted to talk about Ryan Williams. I mean, Ryan Williams was shot out of the gate out of the cannon in 2024. I mean, he was easily widely regarded as this is Alabama's next great receiver. He's already the best freshman they've ever had. And then obviously he hits the freshman wall, as some people call it. His production sort of like takes a dip, which, it's unfair to expect much more than what he had already given during the first half of the season. He was a superstar, but I mean, do you think that there's another level that Williams can reach this year?
Well, I think for one thing, seeing how he handled the end of the season and I guess for lack of a better word, the rhetoric that's been coming out of Ryan Williams is very encouraging. He I think knows that he has a long way to go, and the fact that he didn't seem to outwardly place any of the blame on that on anybody else, I think is a real positive thing to see. He's sort of there was even some mild speculation of like, is Ryan Williams going to look somewhere else after this season, because it didn't end up going great. And yeah, he's all in. He seems fully committed to being at Alabama, to this coaching staff. And it's understandable too, right? Because this coaching staff has a great reputation in terms of putting wide receivers into the NFL. So I think he has the trust that if he buys in, it's going to work out for him. I think probably there's also some understanding that he did not have a quarterback situation last year that positioned him to have great success. But we'll see. There's so much of this hangs on the quarterback battle that's going to happen this spring, and I think Ryan Williams is going to play a big part in that battle, because a lot of it's going to be about, can you make plays with your big guy? Can you put him in a position to succeed? Can you develop a trust with him when he is covered and you got to make a play anyway? So it's and that there were times where he did have that chemistry with Jalen Milroe. I think Ryan Williams, it's as we've been talking about NFL, a lot of the great teams, there is that chemistry between the wide receiver one and the quarterback. When they need to make something happen, they can read each other. They can understand each other. So I think developing that kind of relationship with Williams will be key in the quarterback race that I'm sure we're about to talk about.
Stahl, give me your Ryan Williams take real quick. I mean, I wonder if one of the stipulations for him coming back to Alabama is you get to pick the next starting quarterback. Who do you want throwing you the ball, Ryan, between these guys that we have on the roster? Maybe we'll look in the transfer portal, but what is your Ryan Williams take going into this season? Like, what does he have to do to become like even better than he was at the beginning of the season?
I think it would help him to get like a little stronger, maybe. I mean, it was obviously a lot of him not disappearing, but contributing, I think, less in the offense later in the year was just like teams started to like really like cover him like hard. Like they weren't going to let the freshman beat them. So like figuring out a way to beat some more of that. I mean, he's just not like he's great, but you got to be like a little more smart in how you use him, just given his build. Like he's not Julio Jones, right? Like where he's big and tall and can just like sort of reach over a cornerback and get it. Like he has to more be open just because I think, what is he, 5'11", 6 even, like right in there somewhere. So yeah, just not like the big, like enormous, like goal line fade kind of receiver. So I think it'll help to, it being a deep wide receiver room, Jeremy Bernard coming back, I think helps him a lot. Isaiah Horton, I think, will help him some too. And maybe having some tight ends who are more active in the pass game will help him. But yeah, just like figuring out as many ways to get him open is going to be pretty key there.
Yeah, he's not Jeremiah Smith, right? Like Jeremiah Smith,
No.
that like he could play in the NFL today. He could play in the Super Bowl and be effective. But Williams could too in some ways, because you're right. I mean, he's obviously shifty. He's clever. He's a really smart football player, and that was why he was able to make so many plays. But he's also explosive, but I think you're right. Like he has the speed, but adding some muscle wouldn't hurt, certainly at the position, especially if he wants to play at the next level. Linebacker is a position that sticks out to me, especially because it's good news that Deontay Lawson is coming back. But the big question is, will he be ready to play? Like he's already going to miss all of spring practice. And, he's a guy, talk about a smart player. I mean, he's a guy that he understands the defense. He was the anchor of it. He was the signal caller. Once he went away, I mean, Alabama's defense did improve down the stretch, and they were certainly the star unit of this team. But I think that guys like Justin Jefferson are going to have to step up. Guys like Quay Russaw off of the edge potentially. Alabama's going to need some pass rushers off of the edge that I didn't really see in 2024. Obviously, Hugh Robinson goes down, and that was a big loss for them too. But they've got to transfer into Kai Hill Green coming from Colorado. Matt Stahl, like, what do you see at that position? And do you think that that's going to be one of Alabama's stronger units, or do you think that it's a question mark with Deontay Lawson potentially being iffy?
Yeah, I had Justin Jefferson on my list just because, like, I assume Deontay Lawson, I have no question as to whether he'll be like a major contributor, like provided he's in shape day one of the season. Like he knows exactly what he's doing. Called the signals last year. He's a great player. He will continue to be a great player, I think, regardless of how much like practice time he gets. Like maybe there's some rust at the beginning of the season, but like as long as he's like good by preseason camp, like should be fine there. Justin Jefferson's huge. Getting him to come back with Jahad Campbell off to the NFL, like I think that makes your inside linebacker spot just like really a position of strength for this defense. Just so much experience there in the starting unit. Yeah, the edge though, what Kane Womack calls the wolf spot there, like that's more of a question for me because you got, Quay Russaw is going to be there. But like after that, I don't know. Maybe Jamarian Latham was getting like Wolf reps, like going into the bowl and all that. Like maybe he's there. Like that's a big question mark. You don't have the obvious, like, Will Anderson, Dallas Turner. Like, that edge spot really. Chris Braswell. Even Q last year. There's not the like real obvious star power at that edge. So somebody's going to have to step up.
Well, Matt Scalici, what are we missing here? Stahl, you might have a few more, but we're going to wind down as we close here. What positions are you looking at? Obviously, punter is a question going into the season. Is Keon Sabb fully healthy at safety, and do he and Bray Hubbard make up one of the best safety units in the country? If that's the case, what are you looking at, Matt Scalici?
I mean, I first of all, you guys mentioning the pass rush, I do think that they are well positioned, even though there's not any superstars in that group. They have some experience returning. I mean, the fact that they get Tim Keenan coming back, and even some quality depth like LT Overton coming back, that's not a foregone conclusion either. I think for a lot of people that he was going to be, still a part of that unit. There's some experience in the front seven that I think could add up to some improved play overall. And it was already a pretty good unit. I think they were starting to really get some pressure back there for a unit that hasn't really been great at that the last few years. The only other thing to me that we haven't mentioned on the offensive side is running back, because it's going to be, at least to start, thinner back there because Alabama loses Justice Hayes. And I think that Jam Miller obviously has spectacular potential and has at times been a huge part of this offense. I don't know that he is a every single down back in a game. I think that he is a guy that is built to be in more of a committee type situation and share reps with somebody back there. And so the question is, who's going to step up and be the next star running back? And we can say alongside Jam Miller, but Alabama needs another quality back who can at times maybe even take over and have a huge game. And to me, that's a huge question mark right now, is who's going to be that guy.
All right, Stahl, final thoughts here. Who are some other guys that we should keep an eye on in 2025?
He's right. Richard Young at that other running back position. I think he'll have a pretty good year. Like, I'm pretty high on Richard Young. How about Zabian Brown at cornerback? I think him being able to take a next step up, because you're right. I think Keon Sabb's gonna be back and better than ever. I think Bray Hubbard is the truth. Like,
Yep.
I think he's gonna be really good at one of those safety positions. But yeah, Zabian and Damani Jackson obviously coming back at corner. But Zabian being able to take that next step up and become like a real superstar there, I think is going to be really helpful. I mean, Ty Simpson or whoever starts at quarterback, but like that's gonna be
That's a different episode.
Really, really,
That's a novel.
really key.
That's right.
Really key to that. I'm sure I'll write a novel's worth of stories about that this offseason. Hopefully, the board doesn't trot out some like weird like cake analogy this year. Like, I was so tired of writing about Nick Saban's grandma's cakes by the end of the offseason a few years ago. It's about all I got. Offensive line better be good.
Yeah, you're right. All right. Well, we've told you Alabama's going to win the championship because of these guys if it happens, right? And we didn't even talk about the quarterback, but we'll get to that. Matt Stahl, AL.com, Alabama football writer, beat reporter extraordinaire. Read his work on AL.com. It's really good. Matt Scalici, Beat Everyone producer. Thanks to both of you for doing this. Matt Stahl was a Debbie Downer about the Super Bowl, so we won't have him on next week to predict it and to preview it to all the Alabama fans. But
I don't watch corporate football. Maction, baby. Come on.
There you go. All right, Scalici and Stahl. Thanks you guys. And you can catch Beat Everyone wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Until next time, I've been Flanagan with AL.com. We'll see you then.